Welcome to Keep What You Earn, your judgment and jargon-free zone for entrepreneurs of all levels. Get ready to learn how to scale your business, save money and taxes, and create a business that grows your wealth. If it feels like the financial side of business is like eating your vegetables, well then think of this podcast as the ranch dressing to make the process a little more enjoyable. My name is Shannon. I'm a CPA and business owner on a mission to simplify money and empower others through knowledge. I hope this episode inspires you to take action, but remember that the information we share is for educational purposes only and is not individual tax advice. Now that we got that out of the way, let's start the show. So in starting a business and being an entrepreneur, there are so many voices, most of which are in your own head, that you need to keep quiet if you want to succeed. And it's super challenging because sometimes you don't even know they're there. Sometimes they're so subtle and they're so just insignificant, but they actually make a really big impact because it's those initial reactions to things. It's those gut instincts. It's the reaction to things you're seeing online, reaction to things that are happening around you. And it is the byproduct of how you operate as a default. And especially if you're coming out of corporate America, if you're leaving your full-time job, these are what I consider the three voices that I needed to silence in order to succeed. And I'm still working on silencing. But when I have these in front of me as a reminder, I know that these are the things that have to keep quiet in order for me to move forward. These are the things that are trying to distract me, trying to detour me from my goal. And they can be quite loud. And they can be quite hurtful and they can be damaging even. But for some reason, a lot of these we just open ourselves up to constantly. So I'm going to talk about these three different voices and why it's so important to be aware when they creep in, but also to have a strategy, have a way that you can silence them, that you can push it aside or just acknowledge it and say, thank you for that. And I'm not going to be listening to it. The first one is comparison. We hear this all the time from anyone who's talking about mindset, but not just comparing yourself to the person who has what you want in the sense of envy, but I'm talking about comparison in the context of when you're learning a new skill, being so hard on yourself for not being as good as the person who's done it 22 other times and put the reps in. It's like being mad at the person who has really strong muscles when you're just lifting your first weights. It's like they're 3-4 years deep in their journey and you're right where you should be. You're exactly where you should be. You should be consistent, taking the actions that you're taking, but there's no need to compare. We always say you're chapter 1 to someone's 21. This is not going to help you. What you can convert that into, if you must use inspiration and you want to see those who are ahead of you, I support you. But what you have to do is be mindful of the mental state that you're in when you're consuming that. So if you're watching on social media, for example, and you're watching what someone else is doing, it's more important to extract from that and look beyond the, oh, I wish I had that, into the, ooh, how did she do that? And think about where you need to get to in order to feel like you've accomplished that, if that is a real goal of yours. So if you're going to be, judging yourself based on where you're at and the fact that you're a beginner, then that's not helpful. But if you can look to someone who has put those reps in and you can say, how did they do that? I want to learn from them. And therefore, I'm going to consume more of their content, or I'm going to be following along because I want to see what habits they have. I want to emulate this person. I want to really dip into how they live and how they run their business. Then go for it. But you need to make sure you're extracting the right aspects of that and not just making yourself feel bad. So if you need to mute, silence, you can move those things aside. You can even keep a board, like a Pinterest board. You could keep an entire feed on your Instagram. You could create a whole nother profile if you want to follow them. And you can choose to engage when you're really thinking about getting creative with new strategies and things like that. So you can isolate that. Allow yourself to be where you are in your beginner stage. Allow yourself to learn and absorb what you want when you're ready, and allow yourself to be away from the temptation of comparison. The second one, the second voice you need to silence, this one was probably the hardest. It's between number 2 and number 3 for me. Overwhelm. Chances are that if you're like me, worked in a job where being busy was a badge of honor, where it's expected that you're going to be busy. That is part of the job. Like my job is to be busy. It feels so weird to say this, but my entire 15-year career before I left and started my business, my entire 15-year career feels like one giant chase at reducing my email inbox. I feel like that was my daily mission. I feel like that was the one thing keeping me going, was like, but I have emails I have to get to. And it's almost like an addiction where I didn't realize it. You won't realize this if you're still in it. You won't realize until you get out of it that it is kind of like an addiction, because you are constantly plagued mentally by like the thing you have to go check. You are looking for new things to do because you're getting bored. If you have any free time or any free space, if you have any margin in your day, you go to fill it. Because by default, you're like, well, I have to work 40 hours and I have to be fully working or else I'm going to miss out on, progress or potential. No, the free space is supposed to be there. Chances are you've been busier than you currently are and you've survived. So the other part of this is that you've been busy, you've survived it. You'll be okay. You can handle the overwhelm that's in front of you, but do not put yourself in a position where you're going to constantly be at full capacity. That voice that says, we could do more. We could do more. Don't put yourself there, because when you fill all the space with what you need to do, it can feel kind of good. My Enneagram 3s know this. It can feel kind of good to fill all the space and know how much you're going to get done. But then when the opportunity creeps in, when there's a chance of doing something, when there's a spontaneous opportunity, you're less likely to be able to take it, or you're going to be too exhausted to be excited about it. You're going to be like, I don't have any margin for that. I wasn't anticipating that. And it may not even be an opportunity. It could be something that goes sideways. I can't tell you how many times this has happened with a client where I've been at full capacity. I've been working at full capacity. And then suddenly, we need to refile this, or we need to go fix this thing or fix that thing. And I'm just like, oh my God, that like one thing set me over the edge, because I'm already at full capacity. I can't handle any more unannounced surprises. Then you're well over capacity at that point, because you should have a margin. You should have a margin to be able to accommodate that. So ignore the voice, silence that voice that says we can do more. And that we can fill the space, and that we can, you're not doing enough. You're probably doing plenty. You're probably moving at the pace that you're supposed to. I had to slow the F down this past year and go, you know what? There's a lot more I could do, but I don't want to. And I read the book 10X is Easier Than 2X. And I'm going to elaborate this on another episode, but one of the most like pivotal things, even though it's relatively insignificant in terms of the content of the book, it was filling your days up with, it was marking your days as free days, buffer days, and focus days. And I actually went home after I read that and I said, wait a minute, what? And he was talking about, the author, Dan Sullivan, was talking about how he only had like one meeting on the calendar for 2 hours that day. And he's like, that takes up my whole day. Even though I'm there for 2 hours, I have to be in a great mental space. I have to make sure I'm in that zone to talk about those things all day. Like if you're working on client work, you can concentrate it into certain days of the week, and that's all you do is client work so that you're in that zone. You could also have an entire day that's like team meetings and you're in that zone and you're not jumping around and context switching all the time. And I was like, damn, that's such a good idea. I already do a little bit of that, but I took it one step further. I color coded everything that was focus, buffer, or free on my calendar. And I just went to town on my calendar, making sure that I wasn't mixing a lot of stuff. What a game changer that was. I'm going to elaborate on that a little bit more in another episode on that book. But When we're talking about the voice of overwhelm, we're talking about the voice that is trying to pull you into, yeah, you could fit that in. You could say yes to that. You could take that call. You could, book that meeting. You could say yes to that interview. You're asking for overwhelm and disguises opportunity. And, just remember that when you're feeling overwhelmed, you're getting everything you asked for. You're getting everything you signed yourself up for. And it starts with you. It starts with you actually going back and saying, I should have said no to A, B, and C. I should have, not been so ambitious about whatever it is. And hindsight's 2020, but I'm telling you that if you can just start adopting the margin in your calendar or just start consciously not filling up yourself, your own calendar, your time, you're going to be better for it. Your relationships will be better for it, everything. And finally, I'm going to tell you about the third voice to silence, which is the fear of making someone else feel bad. If making someone else feel bad is the cost of your peace, of you gaining your peace back to be able to move forward, it is worth it 100% of the time. You cannot take responsibility for other people's feelings. You can master the art of how you communicate, but as long as you have implemented and you have communicated in a way that is effective and you have been super clear about where you stand on whatever it is, then you cannot control their reaction and you cannot take responsibility or absorb that. If you want to be successful, you cannot be apologetic about making the right decision for your business. I'm going to give you a couple examples of where this has shown up for me recently. More directly, this shows up in letting people go because you always feel bad that you're, giving them bad news, that you're going to somehow be disappointing them, or that you are upset because you made a bad decision in hiring them, or you made a bad decision in how you handled their hiring. And it's hard to admit that. But it's also hard because you feel like I made a horrible decision and I made a mistake and you're going to suffer because of it. And it sucks. But I'll tell you, when I've let people go before, pretty much that afternoon, that day, the next day, I feel effing fantastic. And it's not because I enjoy the pain that went along with it. It's because I've lifted a weight. It's because I've shed whatever was holding us back. And I go, wow, I have just dropped a huge rucksack off my back. And now we can move forward. Now we can elevate. Now we can really, I've never been more motivated than after I've made those tough decisions. So I'm telling you that if you're in the middle right now, if you're in the messy middle of a tough decision and you're just like, I know what I need to do, but I don't want to do it. I'm telling you to just swallow it and go do it, because you'll be so much better for it on the other side. And you won't be prolonging the pain anymore. You're actually prolonging the pain worse the longer you're dragging it out, because you're going to come to resent them and, the whole process. Every moment that you have the wrong people on the team, for example, you're basically holding back your business from having the right people. You're forbidding growth. You're stunting yourself. And you need to be able to move forward. So the fear of making someone feel bad cannot hold you back. It cannot be louder than the fear of crumbling your business over the feelings of other people. You're really going to let that take you down after everything you've been through as an entrepreneur? You're going to let, I didn't want so-and-so to feel bad, let you close your business, close your doors. Absolutely not. And the other part of this is saying no. So when we talk about making someone feel bad, we're also talking about being willing to say no, and say no in a diplomatic way, of course, whenever possible. But, recently I was at the dinner series with Chris and Lori Harder, and Dean Graziosi spoke. And I admire this man so much for his clarity and for his directness. He was so funny. He was basically telling us how, it's pretty much a clear yes or no if he's going to meet with you, or, do you want to have dinner again? Hey, just so you know, it might be 3 months before I text you again. I do like you, but we're only going to be able to see you every so often. Is that okay? And I just love the expectation setting of, hey, I want to be your friend, but this is what comes along with that. Or this is what I'm really focused on right now. And I think if we just all would agree to respect one another, in these decisions. I think business owners especially respect each other for how we can clearly define those boundaries. If someone were to come to me, let's just say, and invite me to be on their podcast, for example, and I look at the podcast and I go, you know what? It's a brand new show, very small audience, and it's like a large chunk of time they want, or it's like during in a day of the week I don't do interviews and it's like live and I have to travel or like whatever. If there's a ton of barriers to saying yes, like it's going to be a challenge, it's going to be a routine disruption, and it's going to be inconvenient for me. I look at, okay, this is not going to outweigh, like I'm not going to get as much out of this experience as what I'm pouring in. Like I'm going to be sacrificing more than what I'm going to get back. And that happens all the time. And that doesn't mean that show is bad. That doesn't mean that it's not a good opportunity. It just means that at this moment in this season, I'm going to be giving more than I'm getting. And I can't say yes to that right now. So instead of saying that directly, which I would love it if we can get to a point where we can say something like that, but you have to be able to say no. Say, you know what? I really can't at this time. And honestly, no is no. What do they say? No is a complete sentence. That's a big part of it. No is a complete sentence, but obviously you're not going to just go no and then like send the email. So realistically, what are we talking about? We're talking about, hey, this sounds like a great opportunity. My schedule's currently packed at the moment, but maybe we can revisit in 6 months, 9 months, year, whatever. And only do that if you actually want to revisit, because if you don't, just say, unfortunately, I'm really tapped out at the moment, and like maybe leave it at that and see if they continue to pursue. Or offer and say, hey, I'd be happy to appear, but this is really out of the season of which I'm doing a lot of these things. In order for me to do it, I would have to be compensated at a rate of X, or I would have to insert terms here. Like I would need to know that all of this will happen if I'm going to say yes to this. So you can get a little creative with this where it's like, yes, but, or no, unless, yes, if. So you can soften the blow, but you cannot be afraid. If you're going to say no, if it is a hard no, if it actually is a like hell no, you cannot be afraid to just say, no, I'm not at this time. Thank you very much for thinking of me, and move on. Oh, but they're going to feel bad. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. They might feel bad, but you can't always make people happy. You can't say yes to everything. Trust me, you cannot say yes to everything. You've got to start being selective. And here's the other thing. It's kind of this give and take, because if you start saying yes to everything, more people will start asking because they know they can get you. So you also want to be expressing a little bit of that, like call it hard to get, but you want to be a little more selective in where you're spending your time and your energy. Going back to my overwhelm comment, you've got to silence the desire to be overwhelmed by saying yes to everything and creating new work to do. You've similarly got to silence the fear of making someone feel bad and thus overwhelming yourself, because it's just going to lead to a lot of resentment, a lot of wasted time. Trust me. I spent in my first 2-3 years of business, I said yes to almost literally everything. And you know what? I'm glad I did. But here's the thing. Nobody gives you like a graduation from that phase. Nobody says, hey, congratulations. You are now able to say no to people. Like nobody says, hey, you now have permission to kick it down a notch and like say no to a few people and be a little more selective. Like you don't arrive. You don't make it where suddenly now you're important and you can say, no, not at this time. You have to decide when that's going to happen for you. You have to make that decision to say enough is enough. And unfortunately, most of us usually make this after we've hit a breaking point, because that's the sign. But once you feel like you're on a good roll with opportunities, once you feel like you're saying yes a lot, and honestly, have this conversation with the people who matter to you in your life, because you can go too long neglecting the people around you in the name of, oh, I'm building this business, but like your spouse, your family, your friends, your colleagues, whatever that may look like for you, you could be saying no to a lot of other things by saying yes to more things for your business. And that's what they're going to feel. And I know I said, don't be afraid of making people feel bad. Don't be afraid of making the people who don't really matter feel bad. And you'll know who really matters. You'll know, because there are too many people in this world for you to worry about disappointing all of them if they're really not going to help you succeed, whether that be through relationships or literal business. If they're not going to help you move the needle, It's okay. Move on. Obviously, don't go out of your way to tick them off, but you have the permission you never needed to do that. So, again, the voices you've got to silence in order to succeed: comparison, overwhelm, and the fear of making someone feel bad. If you learn how to silence these, you will be insanely successful. Okay, real talk. Our business can really mess with our emotions and our mindset. Am I right? One day we feel like we're unstoppable, like we could run through a wall, and then the next we want to burn it all down and start from scratch. Hey, I'm with you. A lot of this has to do with how we approach our money. And if you need a quick jolt of mindset habits for the next 5 days to help you reboot and recalibrate, check out my 5-day financial mindset refresh delivered straight to your email. Click the link in the show notes to sign up right now. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a rating and review on your podcast platform. This small action goes a long way for podcasters to get our message heard by more business owners just like you. Be sure to check out the show notes for links to information about our guests and ways to get in touch with me. We'll see you on the next episode.